Okay, in the last video, I showed you how to create a ball that just goes down to the ground and comes back up. But there's a problem with this, right? We can tell that it does not look very natural or normal at all. So we're going to add two things that are part of the principles of animation that will really help make this look a lot better. So what I need to do, or what you're going to do, is just create a new layer. Just click on the new layer icon down below the in your timeline. Okay, and I'm going to go back to this layer 1, and I'm going to go to my library. Now the reason why I'm going to the library is because I've already created a ball. So all I'm going to do is actually just drag this ball out onto the timeline. Again, make sure I'm on layer 2. Drag it out. I'm going to put it basically right next to it. So what I'm going to do is create almost the exact same thing that, or do almost the exact same thing that I did in the previous one. So I'm going to come down to frame 50 and I'm going to hit F6. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to frame 25 or around there, and instead of creating the motion tween beforehand, or the classic tween, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another frame, keyframe, so F6. I'm going to drag this down to the bottom like I did before. But this time what I want to do is I need 3 keyframes here. And so while I'm on the keyframe that I just created, so I'm going to select that keyframe, I'm going to hit F6 2 more times. So now that I've got these 3 keyframes, the reason for that is I need to have one where it hits the ground, the next frame it's going to squash, the next frame it's going to stretch as it comes back up. Okay, so I'm going to go to the middle keyframe, and I need to start my squash. So how I do the squash is I need to use the free transform tool. It's right up here, and you'll notice the shortcut key is Q. So if I hit Q, all I'm going to do is squash it a little bit and do a little bit of a stretch. I have my snapping on. I need to turn that off. So I'm going to turn off snapping there and snap to guides and snap to objects just for the time being, so it'll let me kind of stretch it how I want. So I'm going to do something kind of like that. And then I need to drag this down to the bottom a little bit. So if I go between these 2 frames, right, if I'm down here and go between the 2 frames, right, notice it squashes. Okay, it comes down here, squashes just a little bit. Now I'm going to do the same thing on this one, only this time I'm going to stretch it and move it up just a little bit. Okay, just so that it's kind of about, so we can see between the 3. Right, so hits the ground, squashes, and then stretches as it's bouncing back up off the ground. Okay, now what I'm going to do is now I'm going to create the tweens between. So again, I'm going to click between the first 2 keyframes. I'm going to click create classic tween, and then I'm going to click in between the last 2 keyframes. Right click, create classic tween, and you'll notice that now when I hit enter, it bounces and stretches for it squashes and then stretches back up. Now I could probably exaggerate the squash just a little bit more before I stretch it, but we kind of have that same idea. Now there's still one problem with this. Okay, we have the squash and stretch part, but this is not how gravity works. It does not look like this. So what we need to do now is I'm going to come again, I'm going to click anywhere in between these first 2 keyframes on this tween, and if you go to your properties window, you have something called easing, another principle of animation, ease in, ease out. Well, if you want to ease in, you have to go to the left, -100, and if you want to ease out, so now notice that when I hit this button, okay, notice how it gets. If I turn on onion skinning, we can actually see how this works. Okay, so notice that there's a lot more. They're closer together here. This one, they're all exactly the same, but this one, they're closer up at the top, and then it speeds up until it hits the ground. Well, that's what we want. So now I need to come to the last one, because right now, okay, if you notice, it's exactly like this one. We don't want that. Okay? So we want it to be, so again, I'm going to click somewhere in between the last two keyframes on that ease. I'm going to drag all the way to the right to 100 so it has an ease out. And now I'm going to turn onion skinning off for a second. Now if I hit the enter button, all right, we get that much more natural feel to it. So that is the second part of the bouncing ball activity that you're going to do. There's going to be one more part where we're actually going to use a guide to create it, but hopefully this will help you as you're creating the two kind of see the big difference between just adding an ease and a squash and stretch and how much that can impact it. And it didn't take us very much longer, and it really has a huge impact on the way that it looks, makes it look a lot more natural, a lot more appealing.